and this is our presentation. First is chapter 1, Kabilog.
Chapter 1 is all about juvenile delinquency and juvenile justice system. Next slide. Concept of juvenile delinquency. Juvenile delinquent is the individual who sustains a pattern of delinquency over a long period of time and whose life and identity are organized around a pattern of deviant behavior. A minor who cannot be controlled by parental authority and commits antisocial or criminal acts as vandalism or violence. A child or youth characterized by juvenile delinquency. Juvenile delinquents, ito yung minor na nagko-commit ng antisocial o crime acts. Example niyan is yung vandalism. Okay, next. Juvenile delinquency is a commonly defined as an act or behavior committed by a minor that violates the penal code of government with authority over the area in which that occurred. Juvenile delinquency, ito yung ano ng minor na tawag dito. Ito yung minor na ito yung juvenile delinquency, ito yung nagagawa na criminal act ng minor. Ito yung tawag sa criminal act ng minor. The next is it is the participation in illegal behavior by a minor who falls under a statutory age limit. It also defined as any act in violation of law or any form of behavior that does not conform to the standard of acceptable behavior in society committed by a minor. Yun nga, ito daw yung maling gawa ng isang minor na nag-aano, parang labag sa batas. Yan. Next slide. Next slide. Sige, next na. Status offense is an act of behavior that is considered wrong or improper when it's committed by a child or minor. Status offense are not necessarily illegal act because not all status offense violate any written law. However, these acts and behavior do not conform to the standard of acceptable behavior for children and therefore they must be controlled and corrected. Example, running away from home, cutting classes in school, drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, swearing or using bad language, showing disrespect to elders and truancy. Status offense, ito yung mga maling nagagawa ng mga kabataan. Kunyari, wala naman, di pa sila nasa tamang edad pero naninigarilyo sila, tapos nagiinom, ganun, o kaya di sila gumagang sa matatanda. Then next, status refers to the condition of a being minor child. Status, ito yung pagiging bata mo o minor de edad. Truancy, defined as having unexpected absences from school for a period of exceeding 20 days. Truancy, ito yung pagliban mo sa klase ng mahigit sa 20 araw. Okay, next. RA 6809. The law that lowered the age of majority from 21 to 18 years of age. This law took effect on December 13, 1989. Ito yung law na bababa ng edad na pwede kang makasuhan. Ganun. Na-aprobahan ito noong December 13, 1989. Emancipation. Freedom from parental authority upon reaching the age of majority, 18 over. At emancipation, ito yung nasa tamang edad ka na pwede ka nang bumukod, tsaka tamang edad ka na, kunyari, pwede ka na magpakasal, ganun. Tapos yung mga properties mo, pwede mo nang mapunta sa authority mo. Next slide. Juvenile delinquency is an act or behavior. Society has a set of victims and unwritten rules on what action are permissible or not permissible. The written rules are what we call laws. They tell us what action should be avoided and what action should be done. Failure to obey the laws has a corresponding punishments. Unwritten rules ay ano ba? Written rules, ito yung mga batas natin na tinutupad ngayon. Tapos 'pag nilabag mo 'to may kaukulang ano, kapatawaran or tawag dito, pagbabayad gano'n. Ito na. The unwritten rules, sometimes referred as a social norms, are those rules that are not written or papers but are being obeyed because of tradition, conform, culture, and beliefs. Although they are not laws, people are still expected to obey them because these have been generally regarded. Unwritten rules, ito yung mga ano natin, belief, paniniwala. Halimbawa, paggalang sa matatanda, gano'n. Paggamit ng quote, opo. Ito yung mga unwritten rules. Then next slide. History of juvenile delinquency. First, Code of Hammurabi. During this time, in 1641, General Court of Massachusetts passed the Stubborn Child Law, which stated that children who disobey their parents will be put to death. Dito sa Code of Hammurabi, ito yung ano, pag di ka sumunod sa mga magulang mo, pwede kang patawan ng death penalty o kaya pwede kang patayin. Second, Roman law and canon church law made distinction between juvenile and adults based on the notion age of responsibility. Dito yung ano, yung sa ano mo, responsibilidad mo na kung ano ba yung tama at mali. Ganun. Number three, ancient Jewish law. Maturity was to be considered in imposing punishment. Prior, no corporal punishment prior to puberty, 12 years old for female and 13 for female. No corporal punishments pag ano, ito yung mga physical punishment, yung corporal punishment. Years old, 10 years old below na di ka pwedeng patawan ng capital punishment. Yung capital punishment is yung ano, death penalty. Pag 20 years old pataas ka na, pwede ka nang patawan ng death penalty. Number 4, codification of Roman law. This law resulted in 12 tables. Children came to be classified as infants or proximus infantiae. 7 years old below, they are not be held criminal responsible. Ibig sabihin na ito, pag 7 years old pa baba, wala ka pang criminal liability kasi yung pangalan
Next, chapter 2. off na lang yung camera mo.
Okay na, Kuya Kem. Tuloy ko na.
Chapter 2 is about the brief history of juvenile justice and welfare. So first, what is juvenile justice system? Refers to the segment of criminal justice system, including law enforcement, the courts, and the correctional agency designed to treat youthful offenders. Kasama dito yung mga law enforcement, yung mga courts, yung korte, and the correctional, of course, mga agency. Na kung saan, ginagawa para sa mga batang nakagawa o nakapag-commit ng crime. So ito yung mga youthful offenders. Ayun yung kaya kasama yung mga law enforcement, courts and corrections. Yun, para sa mga youth offenders na nakapag-commit ng crime. This system are also designed based on the premise that minor offenders must be treated differently from adult offenders. Thus, different law and procedure apply to them. Dito naman sabi, dahil iba naman talaga yung batas at procedure na ma-apply, may sa kanila, kailangan magkaiba talaga yung pagtrato natin sa minor offense tsaka sa adult. Kasi yung mga matatanda naman, they should know better. Except sa mga minor na kung saan hindi pa totally develop yung kaisipan nila na meron sila. Kumbaga, kailangan talaga magkaiba yung trato sa kanilang dalawa. Next, the intent to protect minors from negative effect of being labeled as delinquents or criminal by decriminalizing illegal acts. Dito naman, next na. Wait lang, may may hindi na sama dun. Wait lang. The minors who are committed the violations of law will not be subjected to the penalty of the imprisonment, but will instead be allowed to continue to live a normal life while undergoing a different and individual's treatment. The aim is not to punish offenses made by minors, but to help them to understand that what they did was wrong and should not be repeated. By doing so, the minor would become a productive law-abiding adult in the future. Sabi doon, yung mga minors na nakagawa ng violation sa law, hindi naman sila dapat talaga na ikulong, na nakapag-commit lang, nakapag-violate lang ng law. Ikukulong mo agad sila. Siyempre minor sila eh. Instead na tulungan natin sila para itama yung pagkakamali nila. Para magbago at hindi na ulit yun. Hindi na nila ito gawin ulit. By doing this, minor would become productive and law-abiding in the future. Next, the origin of the juvenile justice system. In 1535 statutes, which mandated the appointment of overseers who placed destitute of neglected children with families who trained them in agriculture, trade, or domestic services. So yun, ang tawag dito, ang tawag natin dyan, yun sa pamamaraan na yan is yung indenture yan. Sa indenture, ang sinasabi dito, ginagawa dito yung mga bata na neglected children ay binibigyan o binabalik sa mga magulang nila. Kumbaga, tinetraining sila kasama yung magulang nila kung paano tinetraining sila para kung paano nila matututunan yung about sa agricultural, trade, or domestic services. Yun, tawag doon indenture. Next, in 1601, a system was created wherein church workers, with the consent of justice of the peace identified by garant, delinquent and neglected children, and took measures to put them to work. These children were placed in workhouse until their adulthood. Dito naman, ang way nila sa mga neglected children ay ginagawang church workers until na maging adult na sila. Siyempre, mas maganda kung lumaki ang bata sa loob mismo ng simbahan din. For them also to apply the words of God. Next, ilang Doon na para sa may Poor Law Act of 1601. Yan. Poor Law Act of 1601, involuntary separation of children from their impoverished parents, and these children were then placed in bondage to local resident as apprentices. Sabi dito, so dito involuntary, meaning sa pilitan na paghihiwalay ng magulang tsaka ng anak niya. Kumbaga, ihiwalay siya sa impoverished parents para itong mga bata, syempre, kadalasan kasi dyan, kaya naman hinihiwalay. Kasi, syempre, may nararanasan na yung bata nakakaranas ng abuso sa sarili niyang magulang. Kaya kumbaga, hinihiwalay natin yung bata, dinadala natin sa lugar kung saan mas maganda kasi habang bata pa nakakaranas siya ng talagang tunay na pagmamahal ng isang pamilya. Ipaparanas sa kanila yung tunay na pamilya, kung ano yung dapat niyang talagang nararamdaman bilang isang bata, kung paano minamahal ng isang pamilya. Tapos, syempre dito din, palalakihin din siya ng tama. Sa Chancery Courts naman, created in England, sabi, ito yung tawag sa korte sa England, yung Chancery Court, na ginawa to protect the property, rights, and welfare of minor and operated under the philosophy of parens patria. Next na natin yung sa naman. Wait lang. Development of juvenile justice in United States of America. House of Refuge Reformatory operated in 1825 at New York to protect the indigent youths who were at risk to crime by taking them off the streets and reforming them in a family-like environment. It was also in the United States of America where the first comprehensive juvenile court was created. It was established in Illinois in 1999. Wait lang. Bali itong court na to this court is a independent court para sa mga bata na tinatawag nating youthful offender na may edad under 16 years of age, as well as to care for neglected, dependent, and wayward youths. Then the Congress passed the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act of 1974 to identify the needs of youths and fund programs in the juvenile justice system. Its main goal was to separate the wayward, non-dangerous youths for institution housing delinquents and remove adolescents from institution housing of adult offender. Next pa. Child Welfare and Juvenile Justice System in the Philippines. Act number 3203, known as the first juvenile delinquent law that took effect on December 3, 1924 and became effective in 1927. Soon after, this was amended by Act number 3559 on November 26, 1929, then again by Article 80 of the RPC, Revised Penal Code, in 1932. Act number 3203 created the welfare institution, which took the responsibility of taking charge of all government child caring institution, home for the aged, as well as the Philippine Training School for Boys. So, ano nga ba yung create dito sa ACT number 3203? ACT number 3203 create doon yung ano, yun nga, yung welfare institution which took the responsibility of taking charge for the child care institution. Next pa. Provision of revised penal code. During this time, distinct circumstances of delinquent are not taken into account. No diversion. Pag sinabi natin no diversion, ibig sabihin hindi hinihiwalay ang minor sa adult. Noon, hindi hinihiwalay. Talagang magkasama yung adult tsaka yung minor. Stigma of criminality. No provision for aftercare. As young as 9 years old can be incarcerated inside the jail. Wait, a person under 9 years of age exempted as young of 9 years old, pag ikaw ay nakapag-commit ng crime, pwede ka na nang ikulong agad. Exempted ka na agad doon. A person of 9 and over 9 years of age, under the 15, under 15 who acted with discernment, criminal liable. Dito naman, pag yung over 9 years old ka naman, under 15 who acted with discernment. Pag sinabi natin discernment, alam mo na yung tama at mali. So liable ka na ikaw ay criminally liable na rin diyan kasi pag sinabing discernment, may alam ka na kung anong tama at mali. Next. Three presidential degrees or PD 603 known as Child and Youth Welfare Code. Approved on December 10, 1974 during the administration of former President Ferdinand Marcos and became effective 6 months after its approval. Those child over 9 but under 21 years of age at the time of commission of the offense who committed crime is known as youthful offender. So meaning, ang tawag ay youthful offender kapag ikaw ay nakapag-commit ng crime in the age of 9, over 9, but under 21 years old. In the commission of crime, tawag sa'yo ay youthful offender. Provision, PD 603, a child 9 years of age and under, exempted from criminal liability and shall be committed to the care of his or her mother or nearest relative or family friends in discretion of the court and subject to its supervision. Pag ikaw ay umidad ng 9 years old, pababa, you are exempted for criminal liability. Under the discretion of the court, ibabalik ka sa iyong magulang o kamag-anak. Kung wala kang magulang, ibibigay ka sa kamag-anak, friends, kung sino man yung pwedeng mag-handle sa'yo for the supervision. Over 9 years and under 15 exempt from criminal liability unless he acted with discernment. Kapag 9 years old, pag over 9 years and under 15 exempted for criminal liability unless you will be acted with discernment. Again, yun nga, yung discernment, alam mo na yung tama at mali. 15 years of age and above criminally liable. Tapos, 15 years of age and above naman, pag ikaw nakakapag-commit na ng crime within this age, you will become criminal liable. Okay. But take note nga guys, this was not applicable anymore. Itong mga na to ngayon, batas. So PD 1179 amended some provision in PD 603 under the said law. It defines the youthful offender as a child, a minor or youth, including one who is emancipated in accordance with the law, who is over 9 years but under 18 years of age at time of the commission of the offense. Next. So ano nga ba yung inamend ng PD 603? Ang inamend niya dito ay yung definition ng youthful. Ayan, yung youthful offender. Meaning, pinapababa dito ni PD 11 yung criminal liability from 20 years to 18 years old pababa. So, ang tawag sa'yo ay youthful offender. Sa 4 naman, RA 7610 known as the Special Protection of Children Against Abuse, Exploitation, and Discrimination Act, and more referred as Anti-Child Abuse Law, enacted June 17, 1992. This law defined various crimes committed against children, which include child prostitution and other sexual abuses, child trafficking, child pornography, and child labor. So, yun, sa RA 7610 dito, nakara-focus yung yung RA 7610 sa mga crimes na yan, yung mga sexual abuses, yan, child trafficking, pornography, and child labor. Yan yung mga pinapunish niya kapag kinumit yung mga crime na yan, lalo sa mga bata. Take note, the provision of RA 76 on child labor or working children were later amended by RA 7658, an act prohibiting the employment of children below 15 years old of age and public-private undertakings, which was approved on November 9, 1993, signed by President Fidel Ramos, and again by RA 9231, an act providing from the elimination of the worst forms of child labor and affording stronger protection for the working child, which is approved on December 19, 2003. Ang inamend naman ni 7658 kay 7610 is about the child labor or working children. At ito ay naprobahan noong November 9, 1993, which is signed by President Fidel Ramos. At again, na-amend ulit ni 7658 kay Republic Act 9231, an act prohibiting from the elimination of the worst forms of children labor and affording stronger protection for the working children, which was approved on December 19, 2003. Kumbaga, siya, inamend ng inamend hanggang sa mabago yung batas. Next. Sa 5, RA 8552, otherwise known as Domestic Adoption Act of 1998, enacted on February 25, 1998. 6, RA 8043, the Inter-Country Adoption Act, enacted on June 7, 1995. 7, Republic Act 9208, otherwise known as the Anti-Trafficking in Person Act of 2003, enacted on May 26, 2003. This law qualified the crime of traffic in person when the victim is child. On February 6, 2013, an amendatory law to RA 9208 was passed, and this RA 10364, the expanded Anti-Trafficking in Person Act. Dito sa may sa may 7, RA 9208 na nag-amend ng kay 7610 about naman dito sa child traffic. Tapos and on February 6, 2030, naulit na naman, na-amend ulit at nagkaroon na naman ng bagong batas na. RA 10364 na tinatawag natin, ito yung Expanded Anti-Trafficking in Person Act of 2012. Sa 8 naman, RA 9262, otherwise known as the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children. Ito yung 9262 Act of 2004 siya. Approved on March 8, 2004, this law provides protection for children from abuse commitment. Itong batas na to, pinatupad to upang proteksyonan yung mga kabataan At especially sa mga kababaihan for their abusement parents, wives, and certain relatives. 9 RA 9344, otherwise known as the Juvenile Justice and Welfare Act of 2006, approved on April 28, 2006 and became effective on May 14, 2006. 2006. Take note, 15 and below are exempted from criminal liability, while over 15 and below 18 are likewise exempted unless acted the discernment of this child are called child conflict with the law. Take note, under 9344 juvenile delinquent are now called child in conflict with law. The use of word juvenile delinquent, youthful offender, or other similar term against the child is labeling or shaming punishable under law. Dito hindi na siya youthful offender kundi child conflict with the law na. Next. RA 9775, the Anti-Child Pornography Act of 2009. Yan, marami talagang active dyan, kaya pinatupad yung batas na yan. It is the law amended the provision of RA 7610 on obscene publication and indecent shows. It aims to protect every child from forms of exploitation and abuse through the use of child in pornography performance and materials and inducement of coercion and a child to engage to involve in pornography. Yan, lalo na ngayon napakataas ng rate ng mga nabibiktima nitong pornography performance. So ito yung yung RA 9775. Next. 11, RA 10630, an act establishing a comprehensive juvenile justice and welfare system, creating the Juvenile Justice and Welfare Council under the Department of Social Welfare and Development, appropriating funds and therefore and for other purposes. Approved on October 3, 2013. So ibig sabihin, yung pangangalaga sa bata, yung mga kaninang sinabi ko, yung way na kung paano natin protektahan yung bata. Na to, under na to sa DSWD, approved on October 3, 2013. It provides for the creation of Bahay Pag-asa, enumerated what are defined as serious crime committed by children who are exempt from the criminal responsibility and modified the procedure for the children in conflict with the law, whose age range from above 12 to 15 years of age. Ano nga ba yung Bahay Pag-asa? Ito yung dito dinadala yung mga bata kapag nakakommit ng crime. Next, chapter 3.
And Chapter 3, Periods of Human Development and Their Significance to Juvenile Delinquency. And Concept of human development. Development is a process that produces a progressive series of orderly and content change with the lead to the end with maturity. And yung development, yung development, di lang sa pagbabago ng physical na kanyuan, pati yung psychological change, emotional change, a development of the personal, of being a fetus to become an adult. And development is caused by two interacting factors. Number one, heredity or nature. It is the transmission of traits from parents to offspring through the genes. And yung heredity, dito sa heredity, made-develop tayo by transition of traits galing sa ating parents. And environment or nurture. It is include all the forces that influence man. And
Sa environment, dito sa environment, nade-develop ang isang tao through learning process. Natututo tayo because of learning of those man influence us. So, ayun yung environment. Next. And the role of genetics in development. Genetic is the science of heredity. Genes contains the trait of both the father and mother, and that's why genes are called carrier of heredity. Sa genes naman, and it is a science of heredity. Yung genes ng nanay at tatay mo, pinagsasama, kaya kamukha natin sila. Ayan. Next. Ayan. Periods of development. Prenatal period. The prenatal period starts from conception and lasts up to birth. And meron daw 3 stage of prenatal period. Yung germinal stage, embryonic stage, at saka fetal stage. And yung conception, ayan. Pag sinabing conception, sinyalis na ito na may isang nilalang na madedevelop. And next. Ayan. Ayan yung picture nung sperm at saka egg cell. Ayan. Next. Ayan. Once ovum has been fertilized, it is called zygote. The first 2 weeks following conception is the germinal stage. Once zygote implanted or attached the wall of uterus, the embryonic stage begins. And kapag yung ovum daw na fertilize, ang tawag natin sa kanya ay zygote. Yung zygote na yun, nabubuo yung first 2 week following conception. Ang tawag natin sa stage na yun, yun yung first stage ng prenatal germinal stage. Ang tawag natin doon. Ayan. The embryonic stage covers the 2nd to 8th week following conception. At this stage, the zygote is now called embryo. And it's the stage that organs such as bone, muscles, spinal cord, eyes, heart, arms, and legs, and the face will begin to develop. And because this is the time when the basic organ are formed, this is a stage when the most major birth defects occur. Ayan. Yung embryonic stage, nangyayari ito o nabubuo siya 2nd to 8 weeks following the conception. And from zygote, ay tawag na sa kanya ay embryo. At sa stage na embryo, dito nabubuo yung mga parts. Ayan, katulad ng mata, ayan, mata, bibig, buto, o iba pang parts sa katawan ng tao. This is stage when the most major birth defects occur. Yun yung stage na kapag may mali o mali yung pagbubuntis ng isang babae, doon nagkaka-apekto yung isang bata. Yan, next. And the periodic covering the 8th week after conception until the baby is born. In the fetal stage, during the stage of fetus continues from the rest of the organ. By 6 months, the fetus already functioning lungs, the birth signals, and the fetal stage. Fetus now becomes a newborn. Ayan. Yung periodic covering 8 weeks after conception. And until the baby is born, ang tawag natin doon ay fetal stage. During the stage from embryo, ang tawag natin sa bata ay fetus. And it's that stage. Continuous niya yung rest of the organs by 6 months. The fetus already has functioning lungs. Nagsimula nang mag-function yung baga ng isang bata. And that is the signal fetal stage and the stage fetus now become a newborn. Yan. Isa during the embryonic stage and the fetal stage that the developing individual is especially vulnerable to toxic agents and chemicals. This includes certain medication, illegal drugs, alcohol, nicotine, as well as certain viruses and bacteria. Kapag embryonic stage at fetal stage, hindi siya pwedeng ma-expose sa toxic agent and chemicals. Kailangan mo mag-careful dahil dyan yung panahon na nade-develop ang isang individual. Bawal kang uminom ng alak, mag-take ng illegal na droga, manigarilyo, at iba pang pwedeng ma-expose sa virus or bacteria. Kapag ginawa mo lahat ng yan, pwedeng magkaroon ng problema ang iyong pagbubuntis. And next. And next mo. Next pa, isa pa. And significance of prenatal period of the juvenile delinquency. Aside of genetics, the parents, especially the mother, are greatly responsible for the kind of individual the person will be. The lifestyle and the habits of mother during the pregnancy will greatly affect the condition of the child, such as the following: use of illegal drugs, smoking, nicotine, drinking alcohol, beverages, use the medicine without advice of the doctor, exposure to virus and bacteria such as chickenpox, measles. Next. And maternal stress caused by problems, not taking food supplement and vitamins, not eating nourishing foods, being unviolent environment, and exposure to harmful chemicals. These are just some situations during pregnancy that can have lifelong negative effect, whether physical or psychological on the child. When any of this happen, there is possibility that the child would grow up having physical deformities, and psychological disorder that can make him inferior to other, develop him in low self-esteem, and eventually cause aggressive behavior and violent tendencies. Ayan. Di lang sa physical na kaanyuan daw magkaka-apekto yung bata. Pati na din sa emotional problems at psychological. Pati sa mental problems, or a person kapag nagbubuntis pa lang, ginawa mo na lahat ng pinagbabawal. Ayan. Ayun nga, pwedeng mag-cause ng ganun. Next. Early and late childhood. And early and late childhood. From 2 years old to 6 years old. While late childhood is from 6 years old to around 12 years old. Puberty marks the end of childhood and signal the beginning of adolescence. And early childhood, nagsisimula daw ito ng 2 years old to 6 years old. Late childhood naman, 8 years old to around 12 years old. And emotional change during early childhood. And emotion change during early childhood. Sa edad na ganito, kung may mga anak na kayo o mga kapatid, kayo na kayo na umiidad ng 2 to 6 years old, ganito yung mga magiging emotion nila. Pwedeng anger, fear, jealousy, curiosity, envy, joy, grief, and affection. And next. Emotional change during late childhood. Older children soon discover that expression of emotion, especially unpleasant emotions, is socially unacceptable. As a result, older children acquire a strong incentive to learn to control outward emotion, especially anger. And kumbaga, in this part, yung mga bata na nagiging sensitive na kung saan ito yung panahon na dapat turuan natin sila na kontrolin yung kanilang emotion at kanilang galit. And social changes during early childhood. The early childhood is called a pre-gang age. The foundation for socialization are laid as a number of contact young children had with their peer increases. And yung social changes during early childhood, and yung tawag doon ay pre-gang age. Ito yung stage na kung yung mga bata ay naghahanap ng mga kalaro na iba o mga kaibigan, at dito nade-develop yung ilang skills ng bata tulad ng pagsasalita at pagbabasa. Next. So, social change during late childhood. Late childhood is often referred to as the gang age because it is characterized by interest in peer activities and increasingly strong desire to be an accepted member of a children's gang. Or children are no longer satisfied to play in home or alone with siblings or to do things with family members. And yung change during late childhood naman, yung tawag na doon ay gang age. And next. Moral development during early childhood. Moral development is early childhood is a low level. The reason for this is young children intellectual has not yet reached the point where they can learn or apply abstract principle of a right and wrong. Dito, nabubuo yung konsensya ng isang bata. Pag may nagawa siyang mali, she feels bad. Kaya nga ito yung mga panahon na natututuhan niyang mag-sorry. Okay, next. Next. And significance of the childhood period on juvenile delinquency. The childhood period is very important to development of the foundation laid during the childhood period. Will take during and the adjustment that the child will be capable of in later life. Sabi dito, kailangan mo na turuan ng isang bata kasi ito ang panahon na kung saan magmamarka sa isip nila ang mga bagay na ginagawa nila, kung saan pwede nila itong madala sa pagtanda. And sabi pa doon, yung happy childhood. Sabi dito, kapag ang isang bata merong mga traumatic experience during the childhood, sila yung mga bata na may potential na magkaroon ng emotional or cognitive and social development na kung saan makaka-apekto sa kanilang paglaki. Next. And puberty and adolescence. Yung adolescence, ito yung period development kung saan nagsisimula ito from 12 years old to 18 years old, during which many biological or cognitive, social, emotional, and personality traits ay nagbabago from child to adult life. Kaya tinawag itong transition period. Physical change or puberty. Puberty is the time kung saan yung sex organs ay matured at kung saan ang babae at lalaki ay capable na para mag-reproduce. And start of menstruation marks and begins of puberty for girl. Kapag ang isang babae nag-menstruation na, starts na yan ng puberty. Ngayon, pwede na siyang mag-reproduce o mabuntis. Nagkakaroon ng physical change sa kanyang katawan ng isang bata. Ayun. For the boys naman, start producing sperm cell usually between age 14 to 16 years old. Kung mapapansin natin, late na mag-matured ang lalaki. Mas maaga lang talaga yung pagmamatured ng isang babae kesa lalaki. Ayan. Secondary sex characteristic. Ayan. Yung sa boys, facial hair and upper lips and on the chin. Ayan, nagkakaroon na sila ng bok-bok dito. Yung sa girls naman, absent of wala pa. Rougher and thicker skin, thinner and smoother skin sa babae. Sa lalaki, thicker body hair, legs, and other body parts. Sa babae naman, thinner body hair all over the body. Sa boys, thicker pubic hair. Sa babae, ayan. Next. All these changes are brought about the hormones produced by gonads and the glands, responsible for the production of the male and female hormones. Hormones are the chemicals secreted by different glands that make an endocrine system. Different glands produce different kinds of hormones that affect bodily function, including behavior. The hormones that are most influential in adolescent behavior are the sex hormones for males. These are the testes, while the female, these are the ovaries. Testosterone is the dominant male hormones, while estrogen is the dominant female hormones. This is the reason why males and females look, think, act, and feels different. Ayun, kaya sinasabi daw na magkaiba yung iniisip ng babae at lalaki. Next. What does the endocrine system do? And yung mga parts ng... And okay na. Sige, next. Next. Emotional and cognitive change. Aside from physical change, the childhood also undergoes significant emotional and cognitive change during the adolescent period. These changes are also influenced by the same hormones that cause the physical change. At the same time, this due to fact that the part of the human brain responsible for For clear thinking and reasoning, it's still underdeveloped during this period. This part is a prefrontal cortex. Next. Next na. And common characteristic of adolescents, boys and girls. And next na, next. So social change. And social changes. During childhood, the most important people in the child's life are his parents and family. When the child become adolescent, there is a sudden shift in his priorities. He start identifying more with friends. He start identifying more with his friend. He start waiting to spend more time with outside than stay at home. His friend opinions now matter more him than his family, and he is more intent to please them and impress them. He craves attention of other people and approval. He wants to explore and find his identity and just be free. And kapag ang bata pa lang, during childhood, ang pinaka-importanting tao pa lang sa kanila ay yung kanilang family. Pero kapag dumating na sila sa adolescent stage, merong shift of priority na nagsisimula na yung mag-identify ng ibang tao. Nag-start na siyang maging curious sa ibang bagay kasama ang kanyang mga kaibigan. Mas gusto niya nang mag-spend ng time sa labas kasama yung mga kaibigan niya kaya sa loob ng bahay. Ayan. This is also the time when they start getting into romantic relationship. Ayan, balik ko. With the opposite sex. Because of raging hormones and other overwhelming curiosity, they also begin experimenting with physical intimacies such as kissing, fondling, and sexual intercourse. Ito yung time na nag-i-start na ng getting romantic relationship. Ayan, yung 12 years old pa lang, may jowa na. And with the opposite sex. And next. Significance of the adolescence period on juvenile delinquency. The combination of the physical, emotional, and social change have a significant influence on the adolescent's behavior. It should be pointed out that he experienced all this simultaneously, which can be problem in his unable to cope with them. Firstly, the physical change have a great impact on his self-image. This is especially true for girls. And ito yung mga panahon na kung saan sa babae in this stage, kapag feeling niya na hindi siya maganda, mas maganda yung iba kaysa sa kanya, feeling niya ang pangit ng buhok niya, ng katawan niya, yun yung panahon na nag-start na yung babae, bumababa yung tingin niya sa sarili niya. Yan yung panahon na nagkakaroon siya ng low self-esteem o pagkakaroon ng mababang tingin sa sarili. And her body is not developing the way she wants. If her skin is not flawless, she start developing low esteem. Ayun nga, ito yung sinabi kanina. And next na. Yun, last na. And secondly, sabi naman dyan, ito yung panahon na hindi niya alam kung ano ba ang nararamdaman niya at mga iniisip niya. Tapos yung sa lastly naman, ito yung mga panahon na feeling niya, pressured niya siya dahil may kailangan siyang gawin na ina-expect ng ibang tao. At yun sa lastly, ito yung panahon na maaari kang makakilala ng ibang kaibigan na gumagamit ng ipinagbabawal na droga o mga kaibigan na palainom ng alak. Ito yung panahon na yung mga ipinagbabawal na bagay pwede niyang gawin. Hindi niya kayang tanggihan at this point as a person's life. And yun lang. Salamat.
Kita ba ako? Chapter 4. Theories on Juvenile Delinquency. Next. Theories. Set of statement device used to explain more or to understand more bakit may iba't ibang behavior or it is an phenomenon, especially one that has been repeatedly tested and widely accepted. Next. Approaches towards delinquency. First, biogenic approach. Attributes delinquent behavior to physical defects and biological causes within the individual himself. Sabi dito, isa sa mga cause kung bakit ang isang bata ay nagkakaroon ng delinquent behavior because yung bata ay possible merong tinatawag natin na physical defects or any kind of biological causes. Example, heredity, namana niya sa kanyang mga magulang. Next, psychogenic approach focuses on mental and emotional factors that cause an individual to act the way he does. Kung kanina sa biogenic, nakapokus sa physical, ngayon naman, itong psychogenic approach, nakapokus ito sa mga mental capabilities and emotional factors kung bakit ang isang tao ay nag-act ng delinquent behavior. Sociogenic approach cites the various social and environmental influence as responsible for one's behavior. Ito naman ay tumutukoy sa mga tao or social environmental influences as responsible for one's behavior. Next. Classical school theoretical explanation of juvenile delinquency. The principle of free will. It tells human behavior was a matter of choice. Their behavior, those who violated the law, were motivated by personal needs such as greed, revenge, survival. Human behavior is a matter of choice because the people has a free will to choose their behavior, and those who violate that will were motivated by personal needs such as greed, revenge, and egoism. Under principle of free will, merong utilitarian. Those who believe that people weigh the benefits and consequence of their future action before deciding on a course. Ito yung mga tao naniniwala sila na yung classical school na naniniwala sila na ang bawat tao ay tinitingnan muna o tinitimbang muna kung ano ang consequences bago sila mag-commit ng isang behavior. Next. Classical criminology hold that decision to violate the law are weighed and against possible and to deter crime, the pain of punishment, and must the benefit of illegal again led to graduated punishment of the crime. Sa classical naman, naniniwala sila na mayroong isang punishment na may impose sa bawat crime na makocommit ng isang tao. Mape-prevent natin sila sa pag-commit ng crime. Choice theory. is based on holds that youth will engage in delinquent and criminal behavior after weighing the consequences and benefits of their action. Delinquent behavior is a rational choice made by motivated offender who received that the chance of gain outweigh and Sinasabi dito na when a child or a person, is she commit illegal acts, she aware on what is her doing. Ginagawa nila yung isang bagay because kung ano yung magigain nila doon. Choice theory is based on classical school of criminology that views an individuals as having free choosing his action that calculate what he lost. Yun nga, choice theory. Sige. Controlling delinquency, general deterrence. Crime control police depend on their fear of criminal penalties such as long prison sentence for violent crimes. The aim is to convince law violator that the pain outweighs in the benefits of criminal activity. The principle of this deterrence theory is that the more severe, certain, and swift the punishment, the greater is deterrence will be. Ito naman yung pagbibigay takot sa mga tao para hindi sila nag-commit ng crime. Specific deterrence, sending convicted offenders to secure the incarceration facilities so that punishment is severe enough to convince offender not to repeat is Ito naman yung specific deterrence. Ito naman yung specific lang sa taong gumagawa ng crime. Next. Positivist school theoretical explanation of juvenile delinquency. Positivist criminology views behavior as stemming as form of biological, psychological, social factors. Kung kanina sa classical school, ang pinag-uusapan natin is, which is naniniwala doon na everyone has a free will and they choose to commit crime. Dito sa positivist school, pag-uusapan naman natin yung mga theory nagbibigay ng explanation bakit ang isang tao nakakapag-commit ng crime kung sa classical school, nagpo-focus sa crime not to criminal. Dito naman sa positivist, nagpo-focus naman sa criminal not to the crime. Naniniwala sila na maraming factors ang pwedeng naka-impluwensya sa mga tao na pag-commit sila ng crime. First, next. Number one theory is biological theory. It is a set of theories resolved around the idea that individuals are disposed to commit crime because the juvenile has inherited certain biochemical and genetic factors and is predisposed to commit crime. This theory originated from Cesar Lombroso, who developed the theory of criminal atavism and set of theories na focus sa individual na kung saan kaya nakakapag-commit ng wrong proper behavior yung mga bata or juvenile because of example inherited certain biochemical and genetic factors and is under biological theory merong trait theory. Trait theory holds that youth engage in delinquent or criminal behavior due to aberrant physical or psychological traits that govern behavioral choices. Delinquent actions are impulsive or instinctual rather than rational choices linked to biological and psychological traits. Dito sa trait theory, naniniwala sila na kaya nagkakaroon ng delinquent behavior dahil sa kanilang mga physical defects or psychological defects na nakaka-apekto sa kanilang behavior. Next. Biosocial theories naman is ire-report ni Danaw.
Biosocial theories, the view that both thought and behavior have biological and social bases, focusing on the physical qualities of the offender. The one set of antisocial behavior concentrated in the three distinct areas. And these are the three areas under biosocial theories. These are biochemical, neurological, and genetic. Next po. Biochemical theory. This theory views that the crime and delinquency, especially violence, are the result of diet, vitamin intake, hormonal imbalance, and other biological causes. Biochemical, resulta ito ng mga tinitake nating na vitamins or kaya pag nagda-diet tayo, ito yung pagbabago sa ating hormones, especially yung mga bata, kaya nagkakaroon ng pagbabago sa behavior nila dahil dumadating sila ng adolescence age kasi dahil sa kanilang hormones, kasi nagkakaroon sila ng mga hormones changes or physical changes. So isa din daw yun, sabi sa biochemicals, na nagiging rason at nakakaapekto bakit ang isang bata nagkakaroon ng tinatawag nating delinquency behavior. One common explanation focuses on the amount of hormones that adolescents procedure during the teenage years. This is a surge of hormones during the particular period. Ito daw, kung mapapansin natin yung mga bata habang sila lumalaki, nagkakaroon sila ng pagbabago sa kanilang pag-uugali, kung paano sila mag-isip, pati yung kanilang behavior na nagkakaroon ng pagbabago dahil sa kanilang hormonal imbalance. Next po. Neurological theory. This theory explains that the crime and delinquency occur because the individual suffers from the brain impairment or abnormality in the structures of the brain. Neurological theories, in these theories, automatically na kapag ang isang tao ay mayroong problema sa pag-iisip, naaapektuhan ang kanyang pag-uugali. Yung mga bata na mabagal makarelate are related to antisocial behavior. The central system is made of neurons na matatagpuan natin sa ating brain at sa ating spinal cord na nagkocontrol sa ating pag-iisip. To understand this theory is necessary to understand the basic function of the nervous system. The learned neuron are nerve cell, while neurology refers to the branch of medical science. The reason why we can speak, we can think, we can read, and as well as we can move, it because it helps of the nervous system. And the brain has a major parts, and these are the next po. These are the four, and these are the, ay, pabalik po, hindi po yan. And these are the forebrain. Forebrain is the largest, most evolved, and most responsible part of the brain for an enormous range of personal, social, emotional, and cognitive behaviors, including learning and memory, emotional responses, experiencing sensation, planning, and making decision. Forebrain, siya yung nagpa-function sa atin para mabilis tayong matuto at makamemorize at magbigay ng mabilis na pag-response ng emotion ng mga experience natin kung paano natin to ginagawa or paano tayo nagdidesisyon or paano tayo nagpaplano. Genetic theory, it explains that delinquent traits and predisposition to criminality are inherited from parents, and the criminality of parents can predict delinquency of children. These kind of theories, they believe that a child will develop delinquency behavior or predisposition of criminality, these traits from your parents, or namamana mo yung kung anong meron sa parents mo. Genetic. Genetic theories. These are the next po. Arousal theory. It has long been suspected that obtaining thrills is such a motivator of crime. Adolescents may engage in such crime as shoplifting and vandalism simply because they offer the attraction of getting away with it. Arousal theories, mas nauudyok sila kasi may mga ganun daw na bata na the more na pinipigilan mo sila, the more na mas gusto nilang gawin yung isang bagay kahit mali or pinagbabawal pa ito. Psychological theories. In views delinquency as a result of emotional and mental disturbance of the individual. It is the contemporary equivalent of the psychogenic approach and psychological determinism of positivist theories of criminology. Psychological theories. These theories naman kung saan naniniwala na delinquency is a result of emotional and mental disturbance of an individual. It has three sub theories. Next po. Psychodynamic, behavioral, and cognitive psychodynamic theory. id, the unrestrained primitive pleasure-seeking component with which child is born. Id. Id is also known as intellectual drive. This was present since birth. Ibig sabihin, bata pa lang tayo, meron na tayong id. This is the unconscious pleasures drive for a person. Example, food, drinks. Ito yung primitive part natin na kahit hindi natin gusto kusa siyang lumalabas. Ego develops through the reality of living in the world and helps and manage and restrain the id's needs for immediate gratification. Ego, which also known the reality principle. Ito yung nagbibigay sa demand ng id. He is the one who decide what our future actions will depend on. Id will want to give, and that is ego. Super ego develops through interaction with parents and other significant people and represent the development of the conscience and the moral rules shared by most adults. So, super ego. This is the moral aspect of personality. Ito yung nagkakaroon na tayo ng konsensya every time na may nagagawa tayong mali or masama or maling pagdedesisyon. Ego and super ego, we do not use balance and the often we follow we do not think about the consequence that can happen when we always follow Social organization. Popularized by Clifford Shaw and Henry Macri. According to this theory, crimes in urban areas are more prevalent because residents have impersonal relationship with each other. Increase in the number of broken families and in single parenthood are also very common, and disorganized community. Another feature of this organized community is the poverty as evidenced by poor living conditions such as a run-down house, unsanitary and unsightly streets, and high unemployment rate. Social disorganization. This is related to rural and urban. So what is rural? What is urban? That is a city, and rural is a province. Ito yung tumutukoy kung gaano ka-organize ang isang lugar. Mas maraming nagaganap na crime sa urban area or sa isang city. It's because they have a interpersonal relationship. Hindi sila na magkakakilala yung mga nakatira sa urban area. Ito yung isang reason kung bakit naiimpluwensyahan ang mga kabataan na gumawa ng mali or ng crime. Next po. Strain theory refers to the individual frustration, anger, and resentment. Holds that crime is a function of the conflict between goals people have and the means they can use legally obtain them. This is also argues that the ability to obtain this class are unable to achieve these goals, which come easily to those belonging to the upper class. Consequently, they feel anger, frustration, and resentment referred to as strain. This theory explained that yung mga bata na mayayaman may kakayahan sila sa mga bagay na gusto nila. For example, bilhin yung mga bagay na gusto nila, mag-aral sa mga magagandang paaralan. Pero yung mga bata na walang kakayahan na mag-aral, kahit gustuhin nila yung mga bagay na gusto nila, di nila mabili dahil kapos sila sa pera. Kaya hindi nila magawa yung goals nila. At dahil dun sa ganung feeling, nabubuo yung anger at resentment at ang tawag dun ay strain theories.
Chapter 5, Contributory Factor of Juvenile Delinquency. Next. The different theory on juvenile delinquency identify the various factors that cause children to commit delinquent acts. There are biological, psychological, and environmental causes. Of all this, it is the family that is considered to be the biggest different theory on juvenile delinquency. Identify the various factors that cause children. Oh, okay na. Iba't ibang theory ng Wait lang. Ibig sabihin is, ito yung nagbibigay ng explanation sa or nagbibigay ng iba't ibang dahilan kung bakit ang isang bata is nagkakaroon ng delinquent act or delinquent behavior. So, ano-ano nga ba yung mga factors na yun, yung mga biological, psychological, and environment causes? Contributory factor of juvenile delinquency. First, family. Being the foundation of the nation is a basic social constitution which public policy cherishes and protects biological factor, psychological factor, and social factor. Ito yung mga natatransmit ng magulang papunta sa kanyang mga anak. Kaya ganun kalaki yung contributory ng family. Next is psychological factors. A child character, next na mo eh. Types of family. Okay. First is nuclear family. It is consists of mother and father and the biological or adoptive descendants or traditional family. Single parent family. It was It was amplified by single parent and children are most likely to live in a parent-single factor other than death. Two or more adults from a like generation of family who share household. It is consists of more than parents and children, includes parent, children, cousins, aunties, uncles, and grandparents. Next is childish family. A family for whatever reason was never had children. Next is family, step family. It is when two separated seems family merge into one. Last is grandparent family, is when one or more grandparents is raising their grandchild. Ito yung mother, hindi, balik mo na. Mother, father, previous yan. Pag single parent naman is extended family. Example is included the parents, the aunties, and the uncles, and the grandparents. Yan. Kaya ganun kadami yung nakatira sa isang bahay. Kaya tinawag silang extended family. Yung childish family naman is yung kahit kailan hindi sila nagkaroon ng bata sa loob ng bahay or hindi sila wala silang bata sa loob ng bahay. Ang step family naman is kunyari yung nanay mo is hiwalay sa nanay mo at nakapag-asawa siya sa ibang lugar or ibang tao. And grandparent family is the one or more grandparent. Next na. Next. Next is parenting style. Refers to the manner by which parents rear and discipline their children. Ito yung kung paano tayo dinidisiplina yung ating mga anak or yung mga nakakabatang kapatid. Meron tayong 4 na parenting style is authoritarian, second, authoritative, third is permissive, and fourth is uninvolved. Kadalasan dito is nagsisimula din yung kung paano nade-develop yung behavior or pagkatao ng bata. Depende rin kung paano tayo pinalaki ng ating mga magulang. The first one is authoritarian or strict na tinatawag natin. Ito yung mga magulang na kumbaga kailangan mong sundin yung mga regulation na hindi ka pwedeng umangal. Na kung saan ang magulang is nag-i-enforce ng rules, regulation na dinidisregard doon sa opinion ng bata. Ano nga ba yung nagiging outcomes kapag ganitong parenting style yung ginamit mo sa bata? Children tend to follow rules most of the time. Obedience comes at a price. Developing self-esteem problem because they are option aren't valued. May become hostile or aggressive. Children may grow to become good liars in effort to avoid punishment. Next one is authoritative. Ito naman yung merong rules and consequences. Meron siyang rules and consequences na kapag may mistake yung ginawa yung isang bata, kagandahan dito is kino-consider nila o tinatanggap nila yung opinion ng isang bata. Kumbaga, pag yung bata ay may ginawang tama or nagbigay siya ng magandang grades, praise and reward po yun sa kanya. Ito yung sa authoritative. Ano nga ba yung nagiging outcome kapag ganitong parenting style ang ginamit ko sa kanya? Children most likely to become a responsible adults who feels comfortable expressing their opinions. Children tend to be happy and successful, more likely to be good of making decisions and evaluating safety risk on their own. Next mo na. Next is permissive or indulgent. Ito naman yung nag-set ang rules pero hindi siya totally ini-enforce. Kumbaga, okay lang na hindi mo gawin minsan. So, kumbaga, ito is a kind of ginagawa naman ito is more on pagiging tropa, yung pagbibigay ng feeling na mas more on friend than parents. Ito yung mga magulang na minsan na parang parang barkada lang natin. Ito yung mga magulang is yung way ng pagpapalaki niya sa kanyang anak is kaibiganin yung anak. Next is uninvolved or neglectful. Ito yung totally na as in neglected. So, tend to have little knowledge of what their children are doing. Tend to set few rules. May not giving much guidance, nurturing, and parental attention. Accept children to raise themselves outcome to perform poorly in school. Children likely to struggle with self-esteem issues. Ito yung parang walang pakialam or talagang hindi nila ini-involve yung pagiging magulang nila doon sa bata. Without knowing na kung ano ba nangyayari sa anak nila. Ayan. Hindi nila na masyado nagagabayan or nagaguide yung anak nila. Nurturing or parental attention. Lack of parenting. Ayan, okay na yun. Next. Characteristic of family and home that can contribute to juvenile delinquency. First is broken family. As a result of death of one or both parents. Second is broken family as a result of separation of parents. First is ito yung may isang parents mo na namatay or both parents na namatay. Second is broken family as a result of separation of parents, whether the legal or physical. Ito yung isa sa mga magulang mo na nag-separate or naghiwalay, legal or physical man. Third is single parent household as a result of death of one parent. Ito yung isa sa mga magulang mo na nagresulta ng pagkamatay or namatayan ka ng isa sa mga magulang mo or both parents. 4 is single parent household in the case of having an OFW. Ito yung isa sa mga magulang mo naman na nagtrabaho or naging OFW. 5 is single parent household as a result of abandon one of the parent. Ito yung magulang mo na talagang totally inabandon ka na. Ayan. 6 is dysfunction family as a result of addiction by one or more both parents of other family members to buy drugs. Ito yung naging resulta na isa sa mga magulang mo at mga or both parents na naging resulta na is naging addiction or naging members sila ng drugs, gamblings or alcohol or criminal activities. Yan, next na. 7 is dysfunctional family as a result of remarriage or parent. Ito yung sa mga magulang mo na nakapagkasal yung isa sa magulang mo or kinasal ulit sa ibang tao. 8 is dysfunction family as a result of parents being involved in illegal or criminal. Ito din yung kanina is yung naging resulta ng is magulang mo is na-involve siya sa illegal criminal activities or like gamblings, drug, pushing, and prostitution. 9 is dysfunctional family as a result of not having an atmosphere of love. Ito yung nag-resulta ng hindi ka binigyan ng attention or ng gabay or pagmamahal at hindi rin nagkaroon ng respeto sa loob ng tahanan. 10 is dysfunctional family as a result of domestic violence, physical, emotional, and sexual abuse occurring in the family. Ito yung naging resulta na isa ka sa mga naging biktima ng domestic violence, physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. 11 is unhappy family life due to poverty. 12, unhappy family due to the sickness in the family. Ito yung isa sa magulang mo na merong sakit, kaya unhappy family. And then the 13 is, the last is improper kind of discipline used by parents. Yung mali yung pagdidisiplina sa'yo ng mga magulang mo. Next. Presence of any circumstances enumerated above may result in the rebellion of the child and the other delinquent acts which can make the form of any or all of the following. Ito yung first is disrespect of the parents and elders. Yun, hindi ka na nagkakaroon ng respeto sa magulang mo or sa mga nakakatanda. Second is disrespect for teachers and other figures of authority. So, yung hindi pagrespeto mo sa teacher mo o sa mga ibang figure of authority. Third is absenteeism in school. Ito yung madalas ka na absent sa school mo at nakakakuha ka din ng failing grades in school at kadalasan is nagda-dropping out of the school. 6 is getting involved with drugs, alcohol, smoke and gambling. Ito yung nasasali sila sa or na-involve sila sa drugs, alcohol at minsan din nagiging sa smoking and gambling. 7 is entering into an ultimately romantic relationship that can result to unplanned pregnancies or cohabitation. Yung pagpasok mo sa romantic relationship na nagiging resulta ng unplanned pregnancies or cohabitation. Ang ibig sabihin ng cohabitation, ito yung pagsasama na merong sexual intercourse na kahit hindi pa kasal. Yan. The last is being associated with criminal gangs and getting involved in the criminal activities. Ganun lang din yan dun sa una. Is yun, sasali ka sa criminal gangs and na-involve ka sa criminal activities. Next. Next is school. Ito yung consider the second home of a child with teachers as a second parent institute responsible for the training of young person, intellectual, moral, as well as a social skill which they need for them to grow up and productive, law-abiding, and responsible citizen. Not why the school exercises special parental authority or in loco parentis. Ito yung mga sa eskwelahan na dito is mas pinapadevelop siya kaya kinonsider na the second ang mga teacher is second parents and institution. Mga teacher na patulad nila is para ma-train yung bata sa mga magagandang asal at para na kailangan nila para sila ay lumaki ng responsible na tao. And Republic Act number 10410, otherwise known as the Early Years Act EYA of 2013, recognized the 0 to 8 the price crucial state of educational. Ito yung age na 0 to 8 are the price crucial stage or of educational development. This is law. Ito yung mga edad yung mga hindi pa ganun ka-interest sa pag-aaral. And this law was approved on March 26, 2013. Next. Next is community. The term community refers to the different stores that are believed to play an important role in the delinquent of children. It includes the actual neighborhood of the child and the people outside of the home. The cultural norms and behavior of the child surrounding may very well influence the upbringing of the child, especially during their formative years, and such behavior learned is likely to be carried on until the child's maturity. Ito yung mga ito yun, ini-include natin dito yung mga neighbor of child, yung kapitbahay, o yung mga kalaro ng bata, at yung mga ibang tao na sa labas ng bahay na nagbibigay ng contribution or role doon sa behavior ng isang bata. And the culture naman is ito yung mas gusto nila yung nakakasama nila yung kaibigan nila or kabarkada or ibang tao bukod sa pamilya nila. Because ito yung part na nagiging curious sila sa mga bagay-bagay. Kaya yung kaibigan is kapitbahay is in a side of family. Kaya mas ito yung biggest factor kaya nagkakaroon ng delinquent behavior ang isang bata. Especially kapag nasamahan ng ang environment ng bata is environment na hindi maganda. Okay. Next na. Mass media, the most controversial factor that is being blamed by social is what was become the culture of mass media today. The privilege of sex and violence and movies, animation, and magazine has contributed the blurring of the lines between between what is capable and what is not acceptable add to the unlimited access to anything imaginable courtesy of the internet. Ito yung pagsuporta mo sa mga nanonood, sa mga napapanood mo sa kanila. Ito din is kailangan mo i-explain kailangan mong i-explain yung mga bagay na hindi dapat gawin o hindi dapat pinapanood ng isang bata. Importante din na yung mga SPG na palabas, medyo sexual ganyan, like sex or what, basta sexual na hindi pala dapat pinapakita or pinapanood sa mga bata. Diyan nagsisimula yung curiosity kung bakit, ano ba yung ginagawa doon sa TV. Pwede rin ding gayahin nila yon. Kaya yung isa sa mga bata is nagiging and okay na yan. Kaya yung bata is nagkakaroon ng pangit na delinquent acts. Yan, okay na.
Chapter 6, Presidential Decree 603. Child 3, Child and Youth Welfare Code. Next. Next. Presidential Decree 6 Other Notes Child and Welfare was approved on December 10, 1974, and the law was enacted with the premise that the child is one of the most important assets of the nation, and every effort should be exerted to promote his welfare, enhance his opportunity for a useful and happy life. So the provision of parental authority amended by Executive Order 209, otherwise known as the Family Code of the Philippines, which was enacted on July 6, 1987 and became on August 3, 1988. Next. Parental authority o patria potestas in Latin is defined as the mass of right and obligation which parents have relation to the person and property of their minor children. Parental or includes parental responsibility. Ito yung karapatan at obligasyon ng mga magulang sa kanilang mga anak. Next. Presidential Decree 603. It's provide the PD 603 shall apply to a person below 21 years of age, except those emancipated in accordance with the law, and that the term child and minor of youth shall refers to such a person. Ito yung kung noon yung minor child ay 21 years old, considered pang yun, minor. Pero sa pagdating ng RA 6809, ito yung binabaan na yung minor age to 18 years old. Simula nung December 13, 1989 hanggang sa ngayon. Next. Parental authority of patria potestas has the following characteristic. The sum total of the right of the parents over the person and property of their children. Ito yung hindi lang bilang isang anak, dapat may karapatan din yung mga magulang pagdating sa property ng mga children. Tapos, the exercise of which has no distinction between a legitimate and an illegitimate child. The father and mother shall exercise jointly just and reasonable parental authority and responsibility over the legitimate and adopted children. Ito, hindi lang ang nanay ang magte-take ng responsibility o yung tatay. Dapat pareha silang responsibilidad dun sa anak nila. Tapos, in case of death of either parents, the surviving parent shall be exercised sole parental authority. Ito na example nito pag namatay yung magulang yung kunwari yung tatay, yung natira yun na yung parang ng responsibilidad do sa natirang anak. Tapos sa 5, in case of disagreement, the father decision shall be prevail unless there is a judicial order to the contrary. Ito naman yung binibigay lang ito pag kasal yung magulang. Pero pag ganito yung tatay pa rin yung masusunod pagdating sa korte. Next break. Adoption, the expulsion of fetus from the mother of wounds. Kinds of adoption: criminal abortion, classified unintentional or unintentional, provide a revised penal code. Tapos, therapeutic abortion recommended and performed by certified physician when they are health risks had a complication at punished by the law. Next mo pre. Termination and suspension of parental authority. Parental is also terminated on the following cases: upon adoption, upon appointment of a guardian, upon declaration abandon of the child, upon final judgment of the complaint court, upon declaration of absence or incapacity of the adoption exercising parental authority. Next. Suspension of parental authority. Suspension is different from termination in the sense that termination may mean permanent, while suspension always means temporary. The ground used for the suspension of parental authority as the following: conviction of the parents of crime which carries with the penalty civil. Ito yung temporaring nawala yung pagkawala ng responsibility. Pag kuwari example nito, pag nakulong yung magulang, treating the child with excessive hardness and cruelty. Pag napatunayan na trinatrato mo yung anak mo na pwede mawala yung pagiging parental authority. Giving the child corruption or order counsel. Compiling to beg of child. Ito naman yung halimbawa nito yung pinapalimos mo yung anak mo. 5, subjecting the child and allowing him to be subjected to lasciviousness. Ito naman yung inaalaw mo yung mga anak mo na maging subject sa pangahalay. Special categories of children. Dependent children. Ito naman yung tapos abandoned children. Yung pinabayaan o walang nagpapakain sa abandoned children naman. Next. Neglected child. whose basic needs have been deliberately and unattended or inadequately attended. Neglect occurs in two ways. Physical neglect. Child is malnourished o child and without proper shelter. Yung physical, ito, halimbawa niyan yung pinababayaan o sakitin. Sa emotional neglect, ito yung which the child maltreated, raped, or seduced when children was exploited, overworked, or made to work under the condition not conducive to give good health. Mentally retarded children, ito yung hindi nila kayang i-manage yung sarili nila dahil sa mental ability. Next. Sa physical and handicapped children, ito naman yung yung mga batang may kapansanan. Tapos emotional disturbed children. Ito yung mga emotional na problema na hindi nila kayang i-maintain yung pakikipagrelasyon sa ibang tao. Tapos disabled children, ayan yung mga physical handicap, emotional disturbed, and several mentally children. Next. Sa age of criminality responsibility, ayan yung pagkaiba ng dalawang sa PD 603, youthful offender at child, minor, or youth include one who is emancipated accordance with the law, who is over 9 years of age and under the time of convention of offense. Tapos pagdating sa RA 9343, 15 years old and below naman, exempted but will undergo intervention. Tapos over 9 and below 15 years old also exempted from criminal liability except when he acted without discernment. Tapos sa RA naman over 15 but under 18 who acted with this discernment exempted but will undergo intervention. Over 9 years old, under 15 years old, which criminal liability if acted. Pagdating naman din sa RA, over 15 but under 18 years who acted with discernment. Tapos over 15 but under 18 who acted with discernment and disqualified from the abortion will undergo prosecution.
Chapter 7. Chapter 7. Adoption laws. Adoption. A person of age and in possession of full capacity and legal rights may adopt, provided he is in a position to support and care for his children, legitimate or illegitimate, in keeping with the means of the family. Adoption is a juridical act which creates between two-person relations similar to that which result from legitimate paternity and filiation. Adoption po is pag adopt ng isang bata legally. Next one. Legitimate children. Article 163. The filiation of children may be by nature or by option. Natural filiation may be legitimate or illegitimate. Dito, yung legitimate children is yung yung tunay na anak ng mga magulang, parang gano'n. Sa Article 164, children conceived or born during the marriage of the parents are legitimate. Ayun nga, yung pinanganak yung isang sanggol or bata. Next. Foundling. It refers to a deserted or abandoned infant or child. Parents, guardian, or relatives are unknown. Yung foundling is yung isang bata na inabandona ng mga magulang or ng mga guardian or relatives. Yung hindi siya kilala. Walang identity dahil iniwan. Emancipation take place by the attainment of majority unless otherwise provided. Majority commence at the age of 21 years. Ito yung rights ng isang bata na kapag under, dati 21 pero ngayon 18 years old na. Pag 18, pwede nang bumukod yung isang teenager or adult. Definition of terms. Filiation. Filiation is the status of the child in relation to father or the mother. Yung status ng isang anak sa mga magulang. Paternity is the civil status of the father with respect to the child. Maternity is the civil status of the mother with respect to the child. Adopter refers to the person who are adopting. Ito yung mag-aampon or mag-a-adopt. Sa adoptee naman yung aamponin yung bata. Next. Matching refers to the judicious pairing of the applicant and the child to promote a mutually satisfying parent-child relationship. Yung matching, ito po yung pinag-pair yung yung mga bata and yung mga magulang na mag-aampon para ma-promote yung mutually relationship ng parent-child relationship. Simulation of birth is the tampering of the civil registry, making it appear in the birth records that a certain child was born to a person who is not his or her biological mother. Such child to lose his true identity. Ito na po yung kapag nag-adapt ka ng bata tapos yung sa papeles niya, yung sa birth certificate kunyari, iniba mo na yung apelyido niya, kaya hindi na malalaman yung true identity ng isang bata. Next. Effects of adoption. Number 1, parental authority. Pursuant to the natural right and duty of the parents over the personal property, their unemancipated children. Isa sa effect ng adoption is yung parental authority. Once na nag-adopt yung isang magulang ng isang bata na legally, authorized na, sila na yung may authorized para dun sa bata. Sila na yung responsable sa aampunin nilang bata. Next. Legitimacy naman. Isa sa effect ng adoption is legitimacy. Child is a child born to parents who are married to each other all the time of his or her birth. An adopted child is considered as legitimate of his adoptive parents and therefore he or she shall have the legal rights of a legitimate child. One such right is the use of the surname of his adoptive parents among others. Ito naman dito magiging legitimate. Parang na, yung apelido ng bata, ipapangalan na sa yung next. Succession. A legitimate child, an adopted child is entitled to inherit from his adoptive parents. In the same way, wait, sa succession mo. From his adoptive parents, in the same way that the adoptive parents shall also be legal beneficiaries of their adopted child. until such time that he or she marries and start his or her own family. Dito naman yung isa sa effect ng pag-adapt, yung succession, yung sa bata, legally siya, mapamamanahan siya ng mga magulang. Parang ganun. Next. Rescission of adoption. Rescission of adoption refers to the cancellation of the decree of adoption issued by the court with the effect of nullifying the legal relation established as a result of legal option. An adoptee may petition for rescission of his adoption if his adoptive parents or parents commit any of the act enumerated by law as grounds for rescission such as yung adapt yung bata, yung adoptee, pwede siyang mag-petition ng rescission of adoption. Yung ito, mawawalan ng karapatan yung adopter sa bata pag ginawa nila to. Repeated physical and verbal maltreatment by the adopters despite having undergone counseling. Kaya paulit-ulit na sinasaktan yung bata physically and verbal kahit nag-undergo na sila sa counseling. Second is attempt on the life of the adoptee. Third, sexual assault or violence. Number four, abandonment and failure to comply with parental obligation. Ito yung inabandona nila yung bata. Di nila nagawa yung obligation. Republic Act number 8552. Domestic Adoption Act of 1998 that took effect on February 25, 1998. Applicable for adoption involving Filipino parents or foreigners residing in the Philippines as adopters and Filipino children as adoptees. It is understood that the adopters are actual residents of the Philippines with the intent of raising the adoptee here in the country. Ito yung pwedeng Filipino or foreigners mag-aampon basta sa loob lang ng bansa. Next. Age requirement for adopters. Any adopters must be legal age and at least 18 patas, parang ganun, and at least 16 years older than the adoptee. If the adoptee is a foreigner, he must be been residing in the Philippines for at least 3 consecutive years. Yung mga requirements for adopters, 18 patas or kahit 16 years older. Pag foreigners naman, requirements sa kanila is yung 3 years consecutive na residing in the Philippines. Next. Other requirements for adopters. Number 1 is has not been convicted of any crime involving moral turpitude. Kailangan no record, criminal record. Emotionally and psychologically capable of caring for children. Number 3, in a position to support and care for his or her children in keeping with the means of the family. Nasa posisyon siya na kaya yung suportahan yung adoptee. For foreigners residing in the Philippines naman, his or her country of origin must have diplomatic relations with the Philippines. Supervised trial custody. Supervised trial custody, ito yung trial at least 6 months kailangan ma-undergo. Republic Act number 8043, Inter-Country Adoption Act of 1995. That was took effect on June 7, 1995. Adoption involving foreigners or Filipinos residing abroad or adopters and Filipino children as adoptees who will reside outside the Philippines. Ito naman yung mga foreigners na may mga balak adopt ng Filipino children tapos idadala nila sa home country nila sa ibang bansa. Age requirement for adopters. Adopters must be at least 27 years older and at least 16 years older than the adoptee. Adoptee must, yun, awan yan.
Ayun, chapter 8. Foster care. Bago tayo dumako dyan, sasabihin ko muna kung ay yung karagdagan lang dun sa sinabi ni nito plano dun sa legitimate. Isingit ko na rin yung legitimate at saka illegitimate yung pagkakaiba niya. Yung legitimate po ito yung tunay nilang anak pero kasal sila. Pero pag illegitimate, tunay din nilang anak pero hindi sila kasal. Punta tayo dito sa foster care. Foster care refers to the provision of planned temporary substitute parental care to a child by a foster parent. Yung foster care, ito yung refers nito yung dito yung pansamantalang magulang ng foster child. Ito yung magiging pansamantala o ito yung mag-aampon. Yung foster parent naman refers to a person duly licensed with the SWD to provide foster care. Yung bago ka makakuha ay para maging ma-approve ka ng maging foster parent, dapat meron kang lisensya by the SWD na pwede kang maging Tapos ito din yung magiging officially to take the child. Then foster child refers to a child placed under foster care. Ito yung, kumbaga ito yung foster care, ito yung aampunin. O ito yung aampunin ng foster care yun. Next. According to Republic Act number 10165, Foster Care Act of 2012, enacted on June 11, 2012. Basta dito sa 10165, dito sa batas na to, ang layunin lang dito is mabigyan ng pangangailangan yung mga bata na nakakaranas ng pag-aabuso, mga sumusuko na sa buhay, yung mga naulila na. Yun lang po yung purpose ng Republic Act number 10165. Next. A foster parent must be issued to foster family care license by Department of Social Welfare and Development or the SW before he can be authorized to provide foster care. Ito, bago magbigay ng pangangalaga ng foster parent, dapat dumaan muna sila sa DSWD o sa batas ng DSWD. And a child with special needs refers to a child with development of physical disability. Yung mga special needs nila ng mga bata kailangan mabigay nyo at saka ma-develop nyo yung bata. Ito naman tayo sa foster children. Foster children, the law enumerates which children in which circumstances may warrant children to be placed under foster care. Ito yung mga batas na pwede na maging under ng mga foster care o yung mga para maaprubahan ka na maging foster care o ipaapon ka, dapat ito yung mga sumusunod. A child who is abandoned, surrendered, neglected, dependent, or orphaned. Ito yung yung mga maaari ka lang maampon kung kung nakakaranas ka ng mga abandon, yung pagkasuko sa sarili, tapos mga neglected, tapos yung mga pagkaulila mo, yun, maaaprubahan ka bilang foster children. And a child who is a victim of sexual, physical, or any other form of abuse, exploitation. Pati yung yung mga nakakaranas ng mga bata ng sexual o mga physical injuries, yung mga ganun, yung mga nakakaranas sila ng mga pag-aabuso din. Tapos C, a child with special needs. D, a child whose family members are temporarily or permanently unable or unwilling to prove the child with adequate. Ito yung sinasabi dito sa D, yung mga maaari kang maging foster children kapag yung mga magulang mo hindi na willing hindi na willing suportahan ka, tulungan ka, alagaan ka. Yun. E, a child awaiting adoption placement and who would have to prepare for family life. Next. F, a child needs long-term care, close family ties but who cannot be placed from domestic adoption. Yung child na na matagal mong makakasama sa buhay at saka kailangan yung bata magiging ka-close din nung magiging pamilya niya. And G, a child whose adoption is B, disrupted. H, a child who under social difficult circumstances such as, but not limited to a street child armed conflict or victim of child labor or trafficking, a child who committed a minor offense but is released unorganized and who is dismissed, and a child who is and officially protection as a worker protection agency of DSWD, yung mga yung mga batang nakaka-commit ng mga minor offense, nire-release ng mga nire-release o dinidismiss. Kasi kasi mga bata pa lang pero yung mga kasalanan nila o yung needs nila kailangan i-assist ng mga social worker sa DSWD. Next. Foster parent. Foster parent, ito yung as with adoption in a person who wants to be a foster parent, the child must meet the qualification provided by law. And these are, ito yung mga pwede kang maging foster parent. Ito yung mga naka-provide dito. O ito yung mga dapat sundin para maging maging foster parent ka. He must be of legal age. Dapat legal yung age mo. He must be at least 16 years older than child unless the foster parent is a relative. Dito, kung pag mag-aabandon ka ng bata o mag-aampon ka ng bata, kailangan 16 years done o mas matanda ka ng 16 years old dun sa bata. Or, sabi dito, unless the foster parent is relative, unless kung pwedeng mas matanda ka lang ng onte, hindi umabot ng 16 years old kapag relative mo yung mag-aampon. He must have a genuine interest, capacity, and commitment, parenting, and able to provide familiar atmosphere for the child. Kailangan kapag mag-aampon ka o mag-aampon ka ng foster care, dapat ibigay mo yung mga provide niya, yung mga pangangailangan niya. Tapos kailangan nandun yung presence mo na sa kanya. And he must have a healthy and harmonious relationship with each family member living with him or her. O ito dito sinasabi din dito na kailangan health. Pag nasa na yung bata, kailangan maging healthy din. Siguro din maging healthy. Tapos yung mga relationships sa mga pamilya mo dapat maging close niya. And he must be a good moral character. Dapat meron kang good moral characters. He must be physical and mentally capable and emotional. Next. Termination of foster care or replacement. Ito yung mga batayan. There are also grounds for termination of their care and thereof the following. Ito yung mga batayan ng foster care. Mga batayan. Ito yung mga batayan na pag yung halimbawa pag wawakasin mo na yung o hindi mo na ititigil mo na yung pag-aampon sa bata, ito yung mga batayan. Return of the child of biological parents. Kapag pag hindi mo na gusto ampunin yung bata o susukuan mo na, kailangan mong ibalik na sa biological parents niya o sa tunay niyang magulang. Placement for adoption for a child, death of the child, death of foster parents, expiration of foster placement authority of FPA, and in all cases where replacement becomes prejudicial to the welfare of child such as, but not limited to, abandon, maltreatment, sexual assault, violence of other forms of abuse. Pwede mo siyang basta hindi siya nakaranas sa'yo ng mga pag-aabandon o yung mga sexual assault o mga maltreatment na kinukuha niya ng mga advantage laban sa kanya. Next. Next. Yan, government assistance and incentives to foster parents. Dito sa government assistance and incentives to foster parents, ito yung mga dito mga nakapaloob yung mga government assistance na binibigay sa mga foster parents. As already mentioned, the foster care system is designed by the government provide care and support of children without having to put them in government institution. The foster care system love and take enables these children to have families who will love and take care of them and provide of their basics needs. Binibigay dito na para hindi gobyerno na yung mag-ano sa mga bata. Binibigyan lang nila ng assistance yung mga foster parents to foster care. But the most important is their physical and emotional needs. Children are provided for them in real home and family. Yung mga importante nga dito yung mga kalusugan ng bata. As government device scheme that would encourage families to open their homes to their children by offering incentives in different forms. These incentives are next. A. Ito yung mga incentives. A. Support care service. The DSW, the social service units of LGUs and agencies shall be provide support care service to include but not limited counseling, visit training on child care and development, spite care, skill training, and livelihood assistance. Ito yung mga DSW na kasama sa mga programa na support care service nga na kailangan tinuturuan dito na yung mga foster parents ng mga skills training, yung livelihood assistance binibigyan din. Next. B. Additional tax exemption for dependents. Foster parents may declare the foster child as dependents and thus would enjoy additional exemption in amount of 25,000 they're taxable. Next. Government assistance to foster children. Yung kanina government assistance to to foster parents, dito naman foster children. In addition to the incentives given to foster parents, the government also provided assistance to each foster child placed in foster care. Dito din hindi lang foster children yung mga binibigyan ng incentives, pati yung mga foster children. Next. A foster child subsidy. Mga subsidy ito ng mga foster child. A foster child through the agency shall be entitled the month subsidy from the SWD subjects to existing government auditing rules and regulation. The subsidy primarily aim the supporting the expenses of the child to lessen financial burden of the foster parent provided that support by waive if foster parent is capable to supporting. Ito, binibigyan din ng mga subsidy yung mga foster child, pero ang tumatanggap nito yung mga foster parent. Pero sabi dito kung yung foster parents is capable of supporting the foster child, hindi na sila pwedeng makakuha ng mga incentives na bibigay ng gobyerno. Next. Health insurance. Dito yung health insurance, yung mga yan, yung PhilHealth yan, PhilHealth beneficiary. Kung sakaling may mangyari sa iyo na masama, yun lang. Next. Chapter 9. No. Next. Adoption of foster child. As I mentioned earlier, foster parents will adopt the foster child under the care subject of the following audition. The foster parent must have all qualifications as provided by Republic Act 855 to other known as the domestic adoption. Yung mga foster parent kailangan yung mga qualification nila dapat yung mga qualification nila provided by Republic Act number 8552. The trial court custody as required in adoption may be waived provided that the harmonious relationship exists between the child and his foster parent and family members. Dapat yung foster child dapat tulad ng sinabi ko kanina, dapat close niya yung mga other member of family ng foster care. The procedure for adoption for purpose fiscats shall be governed by domestic adoption of 1998 or inter-country of 1995, as the case may be. Next, Chapter 9.
Okay. Chapter 9, Juvenile Welfare Law. Next. Welfare can be defined as well-doing or well-being in any respect of enjoyment of health and common blessing of life, exempting from any evil or calamity. According children are the subject of equipment number of laws that were enacted to promote, support, and protect their welfare. Ang welfare laws ay tungkol to sa mga batas na karapatan ng mga kabataan. Kung mapapansin natin, maraming mga batas na naipatupad. At isa na rito yung next po. Next. The provision on working children has been enacted by RA 76-5. Isa na nga dito yung RA 76-10 at working has been enacted by RA 76-58 and RA 92-31. While the provision on child trafficking have been supplemented by RA 9208, otherwise known as Anti-Trafficking in Persons Act of 2013. The Anti-Child Pornography Act of 2009 amended the provision of offense, publication, and indecent show of RA 7610. Other important legislation for the protection of children is RA 9262. Women and Their Children Act 2004. This law provides protection for children from abuse committed by their own parents and certain relatives. Ito yung mga batas laban sa mga parents, relatives, guardians na inaabuso yung mga kabataan. Next. Ito yung RA 76, the special protection for children against child abuse, exploitation, and discrimination. Approved 7 noong in-approve ito on June 17, 1992. This law is also commonly referred to as the anti-child abuse. Certain provision of this law have already portions, and these are the provisions on child prostitution, child trafficking, child abuse. Ito nga yung sabi ko kanina, itong act na to, 7610. Ito yung laban nga sa mga, yan example, yung mga inaabuso yung mga kabataan. At kasama na rin ito yung sa prostitution, yung mga kabataan na parang yung ginagawang prostitute ng kanilang mga guardian magulang. Yan. Next. burns on child abuse. Ito mga burns of child abuse. GROUP3 refers to any word or deed which defames, degrades, or demeans the instinct, worth, and dignity of the child as a human being. Physical injury included but not limited to the laceration, fractures, bones, burns. Ito yung yung pwedeng laban sa mga guardian no ano, yung mga gantong senyales na nakakakuha sila ng physical injury, yung mga minamaltrato yung mga kabataan. Ito yung mga pwedeng laban sa kanilang act. Next, nung neglect means failure to provide for reasons other than poverty. Yes. Next, yung child prostitution, exploitation of children, whether male or female by yan. Yan yung mga yan. Next. Criminally liable for child prostitution. Those who engage in or promote, facilitate, or endure child prostitution, such as those acting procure or the child prostitution, parents, guardian, or relative. Dito naman, yung mga kakasuhan dyan, yung mga, yan nga, parents, guardians, relative, no knowing alarms for their children or wired into prostitution. Next, those who commit the act of sexual intercourse or ito naman yung kunyari, yung mga naging customer ng isang bata na prostitute. Sila yung pwedeng makasuhan na ito. Next. Yan yung mga liable. Client of child prostitution. Ito yung mga, those who derive profit or advantage therefrom, such as manager or owners of the, ito nga, kunyari, yung may-ari ng bar, gano'n, yung may-ari pinagtatrabuhan ng bar. Pwede silang makakasuhan dito, kasama sila, liable sila. Children a zone of peace, children shall not be the object of attack, they shall be protected from any form of threat, assault, torture, or cruel. Yan yung mga yan. Next. Children, isa pa to, children shall not be recruited to become the members of the armed forces of the Philippines of its civilian unit for be allowed to take part in the fighting or use as guides, furies of peace. Children shall be given priority during motions as result of armed conflict. Yan. Next po. Yan, Republic Act 9208 anak institute policies of eliminate trafficking in persons, especially women and children, establishing the necessary institution mechanism and support the traffic persons, provide penalties for its violence and for other. This act shall be known as Anti-Trafficking in Person Act. And ngayon, tinatag siya ng 2003. Ito yung act na pwedeng ikaso sa mga guardian parents na maabuso sa mga bata. Ganyan, ginagawang ina-announce sila ng mga violation, mga otherwise na pwedeng na hindi dapat maranasan ng kabataan. Next. Republic Act, yan, kadugtong Republic Act. Yan, Republic Act 9208 was later amended by Republic Act 10365, the expanded Anti-Trafficking in Person Act. Trafficking in persons as the recruitment, transportation, transfer for harboring or receive of person without the victim consent or knowledge within or across national borders by means of threat or use for force or other forms of coercion, abduction, fraud, deception, abuse of power, opposition, taken advantage of the vulnerability of the person, or giving of receiving of payments or benefits to achieve the consent of person, having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation, which includes at a minimum the explosion of prostitution of their from sexual explanation. Siguro ito yung ang pwede ikaso sa kanila na ano, yung ano ba to? Yung ikaso sa kanila yung reclusion temporal, medium, period to reclusion perpetua. Yan, next. Thank you po.
That's all, ma'am. Thank you.